All right, today we're going to be writing systems of inequalities from the graph. So in the past, we've given you the system of inequalities. You had to graph it, find solutions, things like that. Now we're going backwards from that. And so what we're going to need to do is figure out how we're going to write the inequalities for these. Now, each graph is going to have a different number of inequalities. So this one, we have two different ones. So I'm going to use red to write the information for this inequality here. So I'm going to put a red dot next to that. And then I'll use a different color for the other one, okay? Now, in order to write the inequality for these, we need to know two things. We need to know what the M is and what the B is. Those are the pieces of information that we would have needed to know in order to graph that before. So the easier of these two things to find is going to be the y-intercept, the B. So that means for this line, it's right here. So that B is going to be a -2. Now, from there, we have to figure out what our slope is. So we're going to find another nice easy point. And to find a nice easy point, you're looking for something that's going to be on the grid line there. Okay, so if I follow this along, the next nice easy point is this one right here. And to go from the left-hand point to the right-hand point, you're always going to go from left to right. We're going to go down 1 and right 1. So our slope is going to be -1 over 1. Again, we went down 1, which is negative. We went right 1, which is positive. And if we were to simplify this, this would give us a -1. It makes sense that it should be a negative since it's going downhill. Now we're going to take this and put it into an inequality. So I'll write those over here. So we have y. We're not sure what symbol it is yet, but it should be y equals mx plus b. Now, you could put -1 in front of that x if you want, but you don't have to. Now, if we're looking at the shading of this, is the shading for this line going above the line or below the line? So if you're looking here, the shading for this one is above. So that means that we're going to have a greater than symbol. Since it's a solid line, do we need to put the equal to piece with this or no? So since it's equal to, or since it's a solid line, we need the equal to piece. So that's the inequality for the first one. We're going to repeat that process, but for the second inequality. So here, I'm going to use blue. Okay. So again, we need two things. We need to know what M is and what B is. So if we're looking at this graph, B is the easier thing to find, the y-intercept. So it crosses the y-axis at +1. We're going to follow that line until we find a nice, easy point, which is going to be right here. And so that means that we're going up to right 1, up to right 1. Those are both positive, and 2 divided by 1 is 2. So we're going to have y, we're going to leave space for our symbol, equals mx plus b. And then we're looking for the symbol. So if we're looking at this line, we're shading below that line, which means it's going to be less than. Since it's a dashed line, we don't need the equal to piece, and so that is your answer. This is the system of inequalities that produced this graph. Now, remember, you can go and type this into Desmos and see if it gives you this same graph. If it does, you know you're correct. If it doesn't, you know you got to go back to the drawing board and figuring out what you did wrong. Okay? So again, each of these is going to have a different number of inequalities dealing with it. So let's look at this one. All right, I'm going to go with this one that's a horizontal line first. Now, if it's a horizontal line, that means that we only have one variable by itself, and it's either going to be x or y. And since this crosses the y-axis at 3, this inequality is going to be y and 3. Since it's dashed, we're not going to need the equal to piece, and the shading for this one is going down. So we're going to have y is less than 3. Okay, when it's just a horizontal line, is y and the number. Okay. The other one we need to look at is here, so I'll use blue for that. We need to know what the slope is and what the y-intercept is. So the y-intercept, it crosses here at a +2. We're going to follow this line counting our slope. So we need to go up 1. Oh, sorry, we're going to follow the line to find another nice easy point, which is right here. And then we're going to go up 1 and right 2. So 1/2 is our y-intercept. Now, you could also build the entire inequality as you're going. So we have y. Since the shading is happening down below here, that means that we're going to have less than. Do we need the equal to piece for this? So it's a dashed line, so no. And then we can put our 1/2 x plus 2. So you can build the whole inequality as 1 if you want, or you can build it and then go back to write the inequality later on. Okay? So let's see what happens here when we have 4 inequalities. Same steps are going to happen, just obviously a little bit more happening as we go. Alright, so it doesn't really matter which one you start with, okay, as long as you're having all of them. And I like to color coordinate so I don't forget what I got going on, and that I don't forget any of them. So here for what I'm calling the red line, we need to know what m equals and b equals. So our b here is going to be a positive 4. And our slope, we got to find another nice easy point. So we're going to go down 1 and right 1. So that would be negative 1 over 1 or just negative 1. Okay. We have y, since the shading is happening below. So I didn't put all of the shading here. This is just where all of the shadings would be happening. So if we're looking at this line, we're shading below that. So we're going to have less than. Since it's a solid line, it's going to have equal to. And if you look at all 4 of these lines, all 4 of these inequalities that are here, all of them are solid, which means all of our symbols are going to have the equal to piece. All right, then we need the mx and the plus b. So y is less than or equal to negative x plus 4 is the first or one of the inequalities. All right, let's go this way. So we need m and b again, since none of them are horizontal or vertical lines. There's some sort of slope to them. So here is our y-intercept at negative 5. Now, I don't have enough to go this direction to find another nice easy point, so I'm going to follow it up here till you cross the grid line, which crosses there. When you're counting slope, you're going to go from the left point to the right point. So we're going down 2 and right 1. So this would be negative 2 over 1, or that simplifies to just be negative 2. So when we go to write our inequality, here's our line. It's solid. The shading is happening above the line. That means we're going to have y is greater than or equal to negative 2x minus 5. Still going around here. Let's go with, we'll write it down here. So this one's going to be my orange line here, this one. So we need to know what m equals and b equals. So it crosses the y-axis at that point there, which would be a positive 3. And our next point is going to be right there. So slope is rise over run. So 1 over 1, or just 1. Okay. So now when we write that inequality, the shading for this line is happening below it, and it's a solid line, so we need y is less than or equal to x plus 3. Again, all of them are going to be in y equals mx plus b form. We're not obviously going to have equals, we're going to have less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. Alright, last one here is going to be this line, this inequality. So we need to know what m and b are. For this one, it crosses the y-axis here at negative 4. And the next nice point is going to be there, so we're going to go up 1 and over 1. So 1 over 1, which just simplifies to be 1. Okay, we have y. The shading for this one's happening above. It's a solid line, so y is greater than or equal to x minus 4. We had 4 inequalities graphed. We've written 4 inequalities. To check this, you would type into Desmos and make sure that the shadings all happen in this space here. If it doesn't, then you go back to the drawing board. All right, let's look at one more here. Here there are 3 inequalities to be dealing with. All right, so let's deal with this one first. Okay, so we need to know what m equals and what b equals. So our y-intercept is right there at a positive 4. Now we're going to follow this until we find another nice easy point. So traveling down here, that's where it's going to cross the grid line. So we would go down 1 and right 3. So down 1, which is negative 1, and right 3, which is a positive 3. Okay, now building our inequality, what symbol do we need? Where's the shading? Shading's happening below. What type of line we got? Solid. So y is less than or equal to negative 1/3 x plus 4. That would be the inequality for that question. Or that would be the inequality to match that graph. All right, moving along here, let's do the dashed line one. So we need we need MB. So on that one, our y-intercept here is happening at 0. And our slope, we got to follow this until we find a nice, easy point, which is going to happen right there. Okay, so our slope is going to be up 3 over 4. So it's going to be a positive slope. And when we write this, the shading is happening above, and it's a dashed line. So that means that we need to have y is greater than mx, so 3/4 x. Since your b value is 0, you don't need to put plus 0 at all. And to be honest with you, you shouldn't be writing plus 0 at all. Last one here. Our y-intercept is happening up here at 2. Sure, slope for this one as you're looking, be positive or negative. So it's going to be positive because the line's going up from left to right. So we're following along. There's another nice easy point. Counting our slope, we go up 3 and right 1, which means we have a slope of 3. We're shading below it, and it's a solid line. That means we're going to have y is less than or equal to 3x plus 2. So your important job here is to pull out the y-intercept, pull out the slope by counting rise over run between two nice easy points and simplifying it as much as possible, and then making sure to look at whether you need greater than or less than based on the shading, and if you need to have the equal to piece or not.